with the last season, because last season it was costing $120 a week in chocolate
So,
to keep my men staff. So
Thanks very much.
yeah, and that's they don't eat shit. So oh, we're a week at CHA's.
Oh, 10
So they
right,
went
live.
the
Expectations.
right, okay, thank you, people. We've just had a short break and now we're back into the second part of the community board meeting, which is a couple of workshops, one on long-term plan priorities, and the second one will be a leasing and licensing policy workshop. Both are scheduled for 30 minutes. So we have Alex here to give us an update on long-term plan priorities.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take it away.
Thanks very much. So we're going to work from my screen together here because we've invented a bit of a new process and I'm still working on it. What we did is take the long list of community board priorities to council and they approved it to go in for staff advice on each priority. And what I have here is all that staff advice consolidated into one document. I want to go through these staff advice on each of your priorities and put your feedback on that advice before it goes up to council. So that's the process as we're running through it. So every priority we were given, I gave staff 4 options. We could either recommend it as a key consultation topic, which was the original question of priorities. We could try to meet the board of the need of the community board in a different way. So it might not have needed to be a consultation topic, but there are some actions we could take to progress it. We could look at it as an idea that's too long for this long-term plan and look at what the plan would, or what the process would be to get into the next long-term plan, or we could say that this one's probably not a good one to recommend to keep going forward into those 3 steps. And so that's what we're doing.
Can you just tell me what the second one was? So there was a
Meet your need outside the key consultation topic. So it would either go into the long-term plan budgets directly within an activity, or there'll be a different action. And you'll see what that means because most of you will sit in that space. Where it comes to those to consider as a key consultation topic, we've largely tried to give them quite that district impact. So we've got the housing item that came from all of you. And there's also an item on Wilding Pines that came in one area that Councillor Hammett raised.
Can we see this online? It's on our screen. Can you make it bigger? Can you?
That's as big as we seem to be able to, I can do that. That seems to be about as big as I'm doing.
Yeah.
Because I need to work as we go.
Okay, yeah.
So we've got the item on housing coming across all 4 boards, and don't worry, I'll read everything on the screen for you. The item from Vincent that we've recommended up that may be of interest to you is the Boundary Road site is a key consultation topic because that's looking at the provision of reuse facilities in the district. It is very likely that that one may not go ahead at the next step because of the cost attached to it, but it is one that will be of interest for you to watch. And we've got the Cromwell Town Centre and some work in the pool space. There is a request in Cromwell to look at a dog park facility that has been pulled up to look at the wider regulatory activity. And that is it. So that's an idea of the sorts of things that we recommended as key consultation topics so far. I'm then going to start taking you through these staff advice. We'll start with housing and Wilding Pines that go for everyone, and then we'll go through the Teviot one. Now, I do need a big disclaimer for you when we get to the housing one. When I checked what I've written with Dylan yesterday, he said it's all accurate, but it makes it look further along than it is. It's much more conceptual than it appears here.
Can you kill the navigation on your left-hand side? X that, and then it'll make your main page bigger.
No, yeah, she can't put live event.
That's it.
Okay, I can try. I've forgotten my mouse, so this is just noting that you identified the interest. So on housing, and I wrote down your comments earlier, Jill, because very similar to you is where we've landed of where is this need, where is it going to go?
What is the need?
What is the need? We've got 2 pathways identified. The first is the inclusionary zoning provisions within the regional deal.
So can you just some people might know what inclusionary zoning is.
Inclusionary zoning means that a certain portion of new developments would be set aside for affordable housing. So part of the regional deal is working through options for inclusionary zoning with QLDC. It's a model that they use. And then the second model that's been worked through at that level is the community housing provider model that Peter mentioned when you first raised this idea for us. So that is a model that operates again in Queenstown.
So
Yes.
those independent of each other, or can they both be done?
They could both be done, potentially.
Yeah.
They are expensive, and there's opportunity costs. They would involve council and the community choosing to take that action at the expense of other potential future actions. So there's a long way to go to make sure they're good ideas, largely in that financial modelling side of things, the impact on the tenants themselves who are in them, what it might do to their rent, and what partnership models are available to us. Will we naturally work with Queenstown where we know it's working? Would we look further aside than that? So we would need to answer all of those questions for you and the community really clearly by August for this to go into this long-term plan. But the plan is to try, and then we will provide you an update on how far that work stream progresses and if it's in this plan or the next one.
So just to clarify, if you've got a developer, say, doing 40 sections, and they're going to lob those sections off and the houses for, 1.5 million, there's going to be sections within there where they're going to put cheaper houses.
There's the potential to, but there's a lot of questions to what you've said there, such as how big is the development? What are the costs of these sites? There's all of that detail to work through still.
Because usually if people are paying big money for a house, they don't want to have a state housing area.
It's not state housing.
No, you know what I mean? They don't necessarily want to, they want to live in the enclaves that they want to live on.
Yeah, that's slightly outside inclusion zoning. It's mixed density zoning you're talking about there, which is where, so there's two models for how affordable housing can be provided. One is when you set the affordable housing in one place, and then the second is that mixed density, we try to mix it up a little bit more. There's a preference towards that in most urban design now because you're less likely to create, what's the word for it? An area of, yes. So they do, most urban development that's looking at those models does prefer to mix it through together.
So with the one, so how's it working with the Ngātahu one up in LFC, but
No,
200 sections?
that one is not part of this because that they're developing that themselves because there's no requirement for inclusionary zoning. It is something that's we're trying to take forward in the regional deal, but it's not currently there.
Okay, no, I was just hoping that would be an example. Yeah, okay.
That is an example of
Yeah.
the sort of development that in the future, if this went ahead, would have a portion tagged for affordable housing. So that's the sort of thing we're looking at if it's an option for us.
Cool. Okay, thank you.
In reality, with like in affordable housing, like we've got certain modifications, specs that they need to build to, so it would look, it would not look how the picture of the other houses that are getting developed as well.
Yeah, it tends to work better that way. You have a lot more pride in you and it all works together.
So you wouldn't sit there and think it's a low level house.
Yeah.
Still got a
Look like
spec
Jack's.
that they've got to build to.
Look like
Yes,
Jack's.
there's still the covenants where they're all to,
Yeah.
no relocatables, no, that kind of
Yeah,
stuff. So
for sure.
everything's still, so you can't tell that guy's in linear and that person's
Yeah.
not, so.
Yeah, which is exactly the point of doing it that way. Yeah. And the second priority that sits across all of the boards now because of Curtis is Wilding Pines, which we have looked into the options for. Now, this one is really difficult because most of the authority on this sits with LRC and we have very few funding levers and there's a large degree of central government responsibility too. So what we can do, we currently provide funding to the Wild and Conifer Control Group through the grants process. There's options there. We have wilding pines on both parkland and some of our road reserve, including our paper roads. So the other option is for us to set some goals for good stewardship on those two pieces of land, which both David and his team and Quentin and his are looking into. I do need to signal too that Gordy has told me it's very expensive in a very blunt Gordy way. So I'll hopefully bring you back some numbers once we've got the further detail on that. But those are the things we've identified that we can action at the moment in that space. So we've tagged that as we could meet the community board and council need without an item in the long-term plan as a key consultation item by continuing to work through that. And now run down to my Teviot section for you. Oh, sorry, did you want to provide any feedback on either of those ideas up to council before I move on?
Just on Walling Pines.
Yeah.
Some of it actually is around, and I talked with, Anne Rogers when they were starting the rural chapters of the district plan. Some of it's around, your zone, is it zoning, like your ONLs and SNLs, like you actually prohibit, landowners from undertaking that control work by having such tight restriction on what they can do to the land, if that makes sense. And I just wonder if there needs to be a broader look at, you know, can council enable landowners through plan changes to control the lines themselves? It makes sense.
So if you've got wildland pines on your property, you can't just go and,
Legally not, but a lot of people would do something about it if they could, yeah. Because, and when I say something about it, they would like the place on fire.
I'll action that one through planning for you and put the advice in the report when
I mean, no, yeah, it's just it's just sometimes, you know, you get a perverse outcome with the Wilding Pines because of something else you've got in place, if that makes sense.
it does, yeah. I'll talk to Anne Rogers as well and get the advice.
Yeah.
And the first one that came from the Teviot Valley Community Board was the entertainment centre / town hall rebuild. At that stage, you were awaiting the March 2026 meeting, and I believe it's no longer needed in the long-term plan.
No, because, well, no, we're not asking for funding, we're not changing the scope. It may, if the design pathways. Yeah, David, the process was the designers feel that there's a change of scopes needed and the location needs to be larger or something to change, then it would trigger an LTP inclusion.
Yeah. I think that the best option is external funding.
Yeah.
And yeah, otherwise, yeah, it would be part of your LTP, bring change of scope.
Great.
Well, in reality,
Unless-
Tom,
Unless council itself decided that it wasn't
Correct.
needed because it was pregnant, just to get on with it, yeah.
Yeah, council's decision.
Yeah.
Great. So if I just say your board response is not needed under the existing scope and that you signal there's the potential for adjustment if the design changes, just to.
Not needed currently, but will be further developed through the,
Be nice to have some-
yeah.
it'd be nice to have some wiggle room.
Yeah.
There is that pathway,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And David's well aware we may need to come back to you and talk about that.
And you also have healthy reserves.
It's not so much funding,
600
but
K
more about
reserves.
it's the scope. Yes, the scope will be the thing up.
And the next one is the
Multi.
the multi-use sports centre, which has come up as do not recommend for further work at this stage. That was because of the likely related expense in the current state of all finances, not just ours, local government as a whole. And we almost felt like popping this as one for 2029 because the reason I was told not to recommend going forward, I'll come to in a second, is that there wasn't the rationale for doing so. So we could always tag it as that was your advice as you wanted to keep working toward that. I was advised that that would be looking at a needs assessment or some sort of scoping on what would be required as the best step.
Another angle is that that's something that in the design process for the new building could make its way into the new building.
Yeah.
So
So you're saying there wasn't community demand, is that what you said at the beginning?
Not community need, so I couldn't get a clear picture of if this were to be built, it would cost us this much money, this many people would use it, it would meet this need, and that's the level of precision that we're trying to get to.
Well, we haven't gone that far.
Yeah,
I know what you're going to say next, yeah.
so we could start that work as the advice.
We can participate that next week if you want.
Yeah.
I think the first avenue for this is, you know, there's talk from people that something like that would have potentially could have a space in the new building.
And I think that would be a good way to try and resolve it, because
Yeah,
as a separate project
yeah,
and a funding
yeah,
line,
and then that's,
you'd be abutting against all the other
yeah,
projects
I know.
and time.
The point I make is that this building's the one chance you got in 20, 30 years to get everything you need, you know, so.
Many priorities together, as you said.
So I mean, I guess that's, if the project that Becky's doing, if we kick that off 6 months earlier, then you would see a need.
You could, and the thing to remember with a long-term plan is although they're a 10-year plan, we'll be starting another one in 18 months. So it's not 10 years away at all, it's just keep
I
working.
get the challenge is, as we, just try it out there, the swimming pool in Manitoto is 70 years old now. That's probably going to have to get into the long-term plan. And so it's just, there are competing, and when we lose water, we will debt fund a whole lot of this future stuff. Our debt limits come right back as well, because the revenue we lose. So there will be some clear prioritisation that will be needed in the out years to prioritise where investment is put for significant bits of infrastructure. Because we won't be able to do it all, obviously, and that's a statement of the obvious. But the needs assessment would have to really stack up that a facility like this ranks really high.
And then it's got to compete with everything
Yeah,
else.
that's why
Yeah.
if the
Yeah, I know.
new facility can be multi-use, then that's one way of resolving it.
Yeah, which is,
And Cromwell have also put in a really similar idea for an indoor sports facility, and Gordy's numbers came back at $40 million to deliver that. Under our budgets, 485,000 is 1%. So that's the sort of distinction we have between the cost of delivery and the amount of funding we have at the moment. That would
That would be low debt funded, something like that.
That's surprising to hear from, not an idea like that.
And the next one I had from you is the evening dining, which you also didn't necessarily want in the LTP, but really wanted to progress. And the planning team are more than happy to work to help progress that. Quentin asked if I could check with you today if the site you have in mind is on public or private land, and they will start working to assist where they can on actioning that idea through existing processes.
I swear we had somebody in the last community board come to us around this.
That was with the food trucks,
Yeah.
so we've already got that, and it took 2 years and speaking to 13 people in council before it took a private person to actually to deal with it.
Part of the issue is that the trading in public places bylaws
Yeah, it was,
expired.
It is.
And
The draft is on my desk.
it prevents people from trading in King George Park where they used to trade.
the rent was also,
They can get a concession or a consent to operate a food truck.
Yeah.
In King George Park, but with that lapse of that bylaw, I understand that you can't now.
It's not my understanding of it.
That was what I was told in community board last year.
Yeah, no, there was, but because the truck ended up being a little bit bigger than like the uncle's caravan. But it was still almost impossible.
There is a bit of a distinction
anyway.
with that truck because that truck has indoor dining, which is a different set of legislation and food safety.
Yeah.
And I think it triggered the need for a resource consent too, that one didn't, was a real.
That was just a nightmare. But anyway, she's got it sussed and she's doing well.
So on the precinct you're looking at the last meeting, you were talking about running a power cord to a particular site that you.
Oh, it was an idea for the Miller's Flat Domain is to have a 3-phase power point out the front for if anyone wanted to run a food caravan, fish and chip truck there for an event for the Seven Side tournaments even. Coffee shops, you know.
Oh, don't take money away from the school, they cater for that.
Oh, yeah, true.
Yeah. We're still put on the 3-phase day though.
Were there any other notes you wanted on that one, or it's
So-
sort of
so-
to community need?
I think with that, sorry,
Evening dining is I mean, it's not the council would provide it, is it talking about the council providing?
We'd have to regulate for it.
that's what I'm getting at, the framework needs to be right.
Seats out on the footpath,
Make it easier.
you know, those sorts of things.
There was a few roadblocks to people trying to set up a food caravan or a food truck and find a spot on ground that they could trade from, and it seemed like they were mainly regulatory hurdles that we could eventually overcome, and I guess that's where that one sits,
So
that's the main.
priority, and probably low cost in terms of bricks and mortar, but, you know, there'll be some staff time, but you know, given
It was in the community plan as an overwhelming
Yeah.
We can-
lack of.
And we've got another one now, and again, too, that's on private property. At Rusty Wright.
Well, Michelle,
Yeah, so we've got two up and running.
Alex did start anyway, that the planning team were more than happy to work.
Yeah.
With you about just understanding your needs first and then moving through that process.
They just need to know the site, because they said it will make a big difference if it's on public land or private land that you have in mind. And then that bylaw is next on my work program after this piece of work here, so we'll have that in place soon. We've got Artie in place in the regulatory sector now, and she is incredible. I told her about that food truck and she gave me all of that background, and we'll get it all sorted for you. We just need to be really clear on what we want us to deliver there.
Yeah, well, I suppose like back to you guys, can you not just have a section of car parks that can be blocked off on after 5 p.m. on 4 nights of the week for food trucks? No.
How long have you been in local government? I don't know if it will be that easy, but I look at the rules for
But
you.
I remember there was something like that last term, wasn't it?
But in
Similar to a
general,
night market model where you just have a couple of sites in mind that people have a look.
but in general, you know, it could be turned 180 to say, it is, this type of thing is allowed, subject to approval, rather than it's not allowed, you know, and you must apply for a dispensation.
Yeah.
You say it is allowed, subject to recommendation from the community board that is then approved by the council. I mean, that would be the skew that I'd like to see, because then it gives people the desire to go and do it, rather than going, oh, it says not allowed.
I'll take a look. I think we can, if we lay that side out in the bylaw. I just need to check with Anne and planning to make sure I'm not missing anything there, and I'll bring you that advice.
The reason it's food trucks, just for a bit of context, is brick and mortars hasn't really worked too well in this town. You know, it's high risk, high up front, whereas a food truck, you can test the market, and it doesn't work, sweet, you go elsewhere.
Yes.
So we're not aiming deliberately at that end of town. I just think we're aiming at that end of town because that's what we can, that's probably the lowest cost, lowest risk way for someone to set up and service a market, if that makes sense.
It does, and it's the reason they can get really good Korean and Thai food and Alex
Yeah.
food now, so I know
Yeah.
exactly where you're getting at.
Yeah.
The next one you gave me was a list of priority roading projects, which are all sitting on Quinton and Mark's and Paul's long list. I believe there are 85 projects to assess for prioritisation, so they'll have that back to you in their separate reporting, and they will be actioning as many as they can, working through that budget process with Waka Kotahi. So they'll give you the bigger update on that one.
So those will be OPEX, or some will be CAPEX, that was it.
I believe some of that's depending on the project, but Quinton will have to give you that report because it's much more complex than
Sure.
any other area.
Okay.
The
So,
That's all right.
so what's the text? I can't quite read the text. So you've got, it's got 3 texts for sounds.
I tipped that you were diversifying income sources. I can't remember why. I just remember you told me to, and that we're protecting our existing way of life, and it was attracting new people to the district. I believe that was to do with the cycling bridge at Miller's Flat and some of the ways of delivery. The King George Park toilets were next up. We're suggesting that isn't a key consultation item. It is a very simple yes or no gatepost for council through the renewals of that asset. The cost should be 400,000 based on properties estimates, which is nearly 1% of rates. Exactly. So
I don't understand why we want to move the toilets. If people can walk to them.
Yeah, Janice is gonna keep looking into that one for you and bring
Yes.
the renewal state to make
I
it.
agree. People can walk to them, but people do
They can
complain.
also drive.
People do complain as if they're stopping for lunch and then they use the bathroom, they've got to go all the way back down the other end. So there's an argument from some people that they should be at the other end.
Right, they should get their shit together, they should stop at the toilet before they get
Yeah,
to Jimmy's,
but
or
you
stop
have
at
to
the
say
toilet
that-
after they go
yeah.
to Jimmy's.
But if you started King George Park again,
Toilet.
you'd say we've got the kids playground, we've got the skate park, and we'll have the toilets and we'll have a barbecue area, you know, all together so that the parents can look after the kids and keep an eye on them rather than toilets being 100 metres away. That's what you do. Question is, do we want to head in that direction?
Yeah.
The truth is, not so many kids use those toilets, the toilets are mainly used by cars.
Yeah, 100%. But
Because the toilets aren't close to the playground.
And I've had two children in that playground since forever, and a little walk to the loo is not a hard thing.
they don't stop at the toilets when they arrive in Roxbury, they stop at Jimmy's Pies
It's like Jimmy's,
and then they walk all the way down.
but it's a block.
Yeah, but some people don't know about it.
Did you want me to put any notes on this one?
Why don't we just put a monorail from Jimmy's?
So what's the pathway then? So that's just your basic renewal, so then how does it get action? Like,
Operational decision at that renewal step. Do you recall that when we talked about King George Park toilets, when that decision point would be?
We've actually put it on, it'll go through the prioritisation LTP process, so there's 5 toilets, I think, in the district that are either going to be renewed or upgraded, and so, as we go through the workshops with council, we'll be prioritising.
so does it, where?
That potentially will be,
Just.
but it won't be a key consultation item in the regular budget, so it's all make the call rather than up to the
I
committee.
mean,
And it's not Jimmy.
They're the gateway toilet, Central Otago, that's pretty horrible, so.
So I mean, if we wanted to paint them and put warm seats on them, you know, like is there anything we could do with them in situ?
There's options, I can ask the property to bring you those options if you like.
Here's a flip, is that, can you, with your new building, have them there? Oh, no, because then they're far from the park.
It was a good thing to think through now though.
Yeah.
So
There'll be public toilets in there if it's an active building, it's not the one, but
Yes.
starting to lose the table quite
Yeah.
literally. Are there any notes you guys want on this one, or are we happy with the staff?
we'll consider it further.
Mhm.
Is that right?
Well, I mean,
What we
if
consider?
we're gonna spend 400,000 or something in town, I don't think it'd be on moving those toilets. But I think that, you know, we're talking about a 10-year long.
But we're not spending money. That would come from our budget.
Gone with paper.
No, it's just,
The
it's
toilets are district-ised.
it's distributed, it's just, so it's not coming out of this Teviot
Yeah, but I mean, to
reserve.
have a little bit of corporate responsibility across the, but I just don't think 400,000 would be a good spend of money. But, you know, upgrading them might be. Or if we did have a plan, I mean, until now, we've all talked about upgrading King George Park. But if we said, oh, well, that's off the table, we're never going to do that, well, is it, you know, amongst our members here, do we have an appetite to improve those toilets, or do we have an appetite to leave them as?
I'm
It just
happy-
doesn't seem to
I think it has to be improved.
I'm happy to improve them, but I think one of the biggest improvements we can do in that area is for council to talk to LTNZ and get that horrible bloody mess cleaned up in front of that park where all the trucks stop. It needs to be curbed and channeled in a way that is
They looked
proper.
They looked at it last year, I think. The year
I think
before, and it was a flat no, just on funding.
Just on that, so you know, so
Well, no, what,
So we-
Kakari
we
weren't gonna
have-
do anything.
we have a heap of standing water in there. It's a great place to be. To park your truck, because now people are parking further and further out to the road to miss the huge puddles. And then the sump at the end of that, at the south end of the park, is next to useless. And it's been like that. I've lived in this valley for over 40 years and nothing has changed. You just can't get it done.
I note all this conversation down, David, could your team give some more advice to the board on their options at King George Park?
With the entire park, with the toilet.
Yeah.
Well, Maria's play strategy might come up with it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, the toilets have been talked about there for a little while. And they've obviously of age now, those, I used to go to them when I was sitting there, I suppose. But, and you are right, those numbers that you throw around, 400 would get you a 4-pan toilet. That's a large toilet that, you know, you'd say 100,000 for half the size sort of thing. And there's efficiencies that come with those toilets too, like operational efficiencies with those types of toilets. They don't need as much day-to-day work. So we do look at it from, while there's an outlay, the overall life and managing the toilet. So just keep that in the back of your mind too. And then I guess we do have the play strategy, which hopefully the council will, you know, resolve next week. And then part of the LTP is looking at how that essentially goes. And then just picking up on your bit, Jill, I guess the King George Park boundary does go to the grasses, so it's that we can control over, and then sort of what you're saying.
I don't think if Land Transport New Zealand don't come to the party, we should just do it ourselves.
So to,
You know, it's pathetic.
I agree, it's right.
It's absolutely
I agree, it's
pathetic. And they've got, you know, they've poured our money into cycleways and all sorts of crap, and we cannot get basic work done.
I think it's a huge asset to the valley, King George Park.
It's great.
So many, they do every day. There's people stopping there. There's
Massive.
picnics and
That's
stuff.
the Gateway Park Central
It
Town.
absolutely is. And so I think we need to make the most of it. We need to make the most of it. We need to. Yeah.
I said to my daughter, why there's so many kids in that park, and she goes, it's the perfect meeting place for mum and dad. One's coming from Central, one's coming from Dunedin, and they meet there, you know, in the weekends, swap kids and drop over kids. It's an incredibly well used
Always people.
park. It's fabulous. All the buses stop
I
there.
just got one more thing from the chief seats. This board might remember, there was a new slide that's looking to go in there, and it's, the last LTP, do you recall, we kept it out a few years, so that there's still some upgrades planned for that park. I don't think it's a year one of it, she gave it, but there was some upgrades coming there that this board decided to move it out of it.
But the park as itself is great, and it's well used, the play area is well used, the play area is relatively new.
Yeah.
It's getting to the park that's.
Yeah.
great, I've noted most of that. I haven't put the monorail, but I do want one. The decision,
Please don't.
The decision point will be for Councillor Pennant when he's looking at those 5 toilets as a priority. So if you make sure he's the clear advice from the board going into that conversation,
Right.
that's as much as we need.
The other thing, sorry, I'm gonna muddy
Okay.
the waters a little bit further. With your rec project, if it's an activated building, you potentially have public toilets in that facility, which would be as close as anything to the top end of the park.
The request to expand library offerings, both Emma and David were already ready to deliver on. So they are working through the options as part of that library strategy. We'll stay in touch as that moves ahead. The options in front of council in the long-term plan are going to include some options to increase access, and that's looking at if we could explore weekend and night services and what that might cost, where it might come from, if having some book lockers might open up the ability to access those books later, and if there's the opportunity to have a book bus to service the wider district in one facility. And they're also looking at some adjustments to the way we depreciate the collection to keep it a bit more current. Is there anything else you wanted to note to meet the need there, or does that sort of cover what you're looking at?
Well. Yeah, it's fine. I find that it may be considered in the rebuild of the event centre. It may be.
Yeah.
I'm sure there'd be a stakeholder, potential stakeholder, whether it gets approved or not, another issue, but I'm sure there'd be a potential stakeholder in the.
I'll make sure they're aware of that.
Oh, no, it's right, Karen.
That's all right. And the next one was the delivery of CCTV in Roxburgh Village. There is an existing project that David is working on alongside Nathan, our Chief Information Officer, is looking at how that can be delivered. So they'll bring you an update on that one. They didn't think we needed to put that in the LTP because we won't need an additional budget. They've looked at ways to deliver that one.
When did we decide that we wish to deliver CCTV?
Well, we didn't specifically decide it, but when I came to the meeting and asked for priorities for this board for potential to fund, I said the delivery of CCTV through the village to keep an eye on safety was one thing to consider. So it's not a yes or no, it will happen.
So I'm going to ask the same question I asked the police when they came in here. If we get CCTV in the village, where does the data go?
That is exactly my question too, is where.
Because we were told
Who
if we
has
get to
access
the
to it?
Dunedin Police Station, and I'll put it right on record now, I am vehemently opposed to that. And I don't mind saying the same thing now as I did then. I don't mind paying for CCTV cameras so long as the CCTV cameras stay with the building that they're put on and that the data from those cameras does not go to the Dunedin Police or Alex Police or anywhere else.
Yeah.
Because
And it's all stuff that is investigated, needs to be, decided.
Yeah.
And so we're not quite, so it's good to know that, Jill, and it's just, that'll be something we look at through the process.
thank you.
But is this, when you say Roxburgh Village, are you talking about the dam, but you're talking about the township here?
We're not actually sure on the location. This was the request that came from this board, so it's just looking at what would the options be for you to deliver on that.
Okay,
My
when-
understanding was the town centre.
Yeah, village is what the locals call the hydro village.
The town-
Yeah, yeah, because when you say village, yeah, we say hydro village.
Oh, Agnes playing it again.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's what happens when you bring people from Alexandra in. Fellow policy wonk here, how does this look if we had some policy controls around those privacy provisions that kept it with council? Does
Yeah.
that cover what you want me to put?
Do you have an existing policy?
We do, because we have existing CCTV.
Yeah.
When we are formally requested by the police to release data, we do, because that's the arrangement. But, CCTV footage is private information and all this sort of stuff, so we have to treat it appropriately.
I got quite through a path through the process at a previous request and looking at the options, so we do have a basis to understand it.
So what happens here, just to let you know, what happens here in the district, should anything untoward happen? There's several businesses that have facing CCTV cameras, and a policeman goes along and has a look at those. We've got several fruit stalls and stalls and bits and pieces, and so it's not that the town is bereft of CCTV cameras, it's just that they're privately.
And like you had. I saw Lou looking to watch, so I'm going to rush you through the next one, which is the expanding the skate park to include the BMX pump track. That one, again, they were wanting more evidence of need or usage because of the level of expenditure. It came back at approximately $200,000 or a 0.5% rates rise. So that is why we've recorded it that way. But I'm happy to put anything else, and the notes I've put back for you is that the options to explore that would be to look again at it through the play strategy, to look into that needs assessment and to start work on a business case to put into the next LTP process. This one Carly's already given you, which was my favourite piece of good news, is that the request can be delivered through existing budgets and it's planned for. So good news on the Roxburgh poll. Yeah. Seating wasn't part of it, but David and Carly both said it can easily be considered and accommodated as well. Rubbish bin collection frequency, particularly at Miller's Flat, that would be $1,400 per year per bin. So Gordon Will has suggested they will monitor the usage at the site. There's at least one bin they think they could relocate to meet the needs better, and they'll keep actioning that as a work item outside the LPP. Yes.
Where did the response come in around
The peak demand on the rubbish bins in Roxburgh through summer, was that part of this?
I did not note that to them.
So it's probably more an operational thing, but we had an issue this summer where the bins, the once a day collection wasn't enough in the peak of the tourist season.
that will come up through that usage assessment, I'm sure, but I'll make sure I know.
It was pretty bad, it's overflowing.
We have for 3 years, I have also asked for that just in our peak season and our long weekends to maybe do interchangeable bins to put
Like
little bins
There really
outside.
is almost 15th of
And-
December to the end of January.
You know,
needs to be,
picking up rubbish.
increasing frequency.
Great, I'll note that back to them and we'll keep an eye on it and come to you. And you had interest in both healthcare and after-school solutions, so we noted that into community vision for community planning. And as we discussed it today, I noted that you were doing work there as well to keep an eye on together. And I've also just noted that
Sorry, just say healthcare.
healthcare, yeah, you were
What
looking
does
at
that say there?
healthcare
It's the
services
integration.
and support for an ageing population.
Sorry, I couldn't quite read it.
That's right. All 4 boards have signalled that as an area of interest too. So that's definitely one you can all work together on for sure. And I believe as in the regional deals as well. And then I've just added a note here to council that the alluvial fan hazard is something you're actively working towards. It's within ORC responsibility, but it's just worth noting that there's potential expense there in the future.
It's not just ORC, it's CODC as well, because you guys are in charge of, I think, about 5 of the causeways that come down from the mountain.
Okay.
That haven't been touched since
Very
2000.
but I haven't been RSA can't waterfall every TA,
Yeah.
not specific to that, but the key stakeholders.
So ORC is in charge of,
I believe ORC is in charge of channel and vegetation maintenance up to a certain proximity of the culverts and the form structures.
units in that report.
Peter, what's your?
They do blackjacks,
I don't think you, top of my head, I can't recall. But
Yeah.
I'll ask you.
they're
There's something around the form structures.
they're blackjacks, golf course.
I think John also got a channel
Yeah.
as well on the channel.
It's about Creek.
The report and just noted up to council as a potential future expense in the area. That is everything I had listed and all the feedback I had for you. Just checking that nobody on the call wanted to add anything else or clarify anything else.
Lunch.
Yeah, you're pretty,
And is there
pretty
any,
frugal down here. We don't have a $42 million gymnasium.
but is there anything else you want me to note into this one as well?
I can't think.
Great. In that case, you're the first board I've tried this process with, so I will go through the other 3. It'll be reported up to council, and it will just be an information report for them to go into their wider decision making. And at that stage, I'll also bring the full report back to you, so you will have a copy and know how to advocate for any of it as a next step. And that's me for today.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Now, I have to duck off, but thank you.
Appreciate your teams.
It was nice to come down the valley.
One day you might be able to park outside our park.
That's right, use the toilet.
Oh, on cheap plates.
Well, we get to share this one.
Oh, yes.
Just to explain. Hang on, I have a look.
I'm glad I'm seeing you here this publicly.
We've got a new photo system and comms, and it's just been so cool to look through our database and pull stuff out. So you'll see a lot of pictures from me coming up now that we've got Canto. Did you want me to introduce?
Yep, there you go.
So this is the review of the community leasing and licensing policy. It was formerly known as the leasing and licensing policy. It was developed about a year prior to me starting, so it's about 6 years old now. I did the first and second review from that real community lens, and both times I did that review, it was done entirely on community board feedback. So it had quite a narrow scope. We've now got a statutory property team on board who've done a more thorough review of the other elements. and they have looked at our commercial leasing and licensing options and decided that we should put some of that into this policy, and just had some very small tweaks on the community side of things. They're relatively minor, but they can have an impact on some of the rent going forward, so we want to make sure you're across what that looks like. When I say an impact on the rent going forward, we expect that to be minor. So the main headlines in the community space for you to know is that we have put a more consistent approach across it. So that means as those licenses come up, it's just got the potential to sit slightly differently. We'll bring you those differences, and we've added some discretion into the process for that. So the main changes is the addition of those commercial elements, and Zelda will take you through what they are. There is also some changes to the delegations within it. The main thing that we are looking to do there is to speed up the process for straightforward renewals. So anything where there's multiple community groups competing for the need would still come to you. It wouldn't be a change, even though it says the word delegations. So I'll hand over to you.
Yeah, the main reason for the Alex has basically covered most of the stuff, but it's because we're a new team. We started working with the 2021 policy, and there was a bit of gaps that we identified. One was the commercial side of things went in there, so there was no guidelines on what we do with commercial leases. It's just basically doing what we had in the 2021, but clarifying certain unclear things on it. So it strengthens the transparencies, because in the policy now it states what is how we make our decisions and how we deal with each leases, and we also align it with legislative changes that obviously since 2021 there was changes. The major one was the Corporate Society Act changes that everybody had to re-register in terms of the 2022 Act, which had implications with leases that was existing, and we're working through that. Okay, on with the next one. I think that's just for him. The tenure framework was just a bit more broadened, because we're now including the community licenses, which was sort of always put with the leases. The only difference with the license versus leases is with a license to occupy, you have just you haven't got exclusive right to the property, so you've just got rights to a certain part of the property, and that's when you have a license to occupy. And we've just stipulated those years that we normally would have. It's all things that have been done in practice, but we just needed it to be part of the policy. And then we've included the commercial leases for a 5 + 5 years. Now, the timeframes is just a guidance. We will bring every report to you with any new lease or license for you to decide on the terms. It all depends on whether we think that the land will be used in the future. Obviously, we don't want to lock land in for 30 years if there's an intention in the next 5 to 10 years to use it for something else.
So how many of these do we have in the valley?
I will come back to you, or I'll talk to you just at the end about how we're working as a team now, and how we'll come back with reporting on your particular leases and what's the work program for your area. So I'll cover that in the last slide, I think. Rent calculations. So the community leases since 2021 have always been on 2.5% of the 5-year average 5-year income of the clubs or the organisations, and it always said less affiliation fees. But in practice, we've also excluded grants, donations, and fundraising, which was part of our policy. Although in practice it was done, so I just needed to include that in the policy to be clear. And then
For buildings and land, or just for land?
Sports.
it's basically sports, well, community groups that's got a community lease. That's what, so it could be land and buildings, it could just be land as well.
So if you've got a rugby club that's leasing land off you,
Yeah,
and they get a grant for something, you pull some of that back as rent.
so if they get a grant to improve the facility, obviously, sometimes that grants come from council, so we don't want to include that as an income.
What if it comes from states?
Well, specifically fundraising has been a problem with regards to bar sales, and I've excluded that in the definition. So fundraising by selling liquor isn't considered fundraising from a policy point of view. But I need to point out that there is clubs, and I think Roxburgh clubs, one of them, I'm not 100% sure, that actually has in their lease the ability to not exclude that from their rent. So with existing agreements, I can't do anything about that, and the policy can't change that. It's only when we come to renewal of those leases that we will be able to then tell the a new in terms of the new lease, we can then apply the policy. But I can't apply it to current 30-year agreements.
So if I decided to give that Sarah one auto, and I decided to give our local rugby club 20 grand.
Nice. It's very generous.
Or a rugby club, so quite sad. So some of that goes back to, but it's, so some of that goes.
Well, that's been the practice then, that wouldn't be taken into account as
donation.
an income,
So what we do is we used to take splits.
Yeah, I've got misread.
It used to be very clearly 2.5% of the profit.
Yeah.
And then we
Yeah,
have
no,
this
gotcha.
around it. And
Gotcha.
what Zelda and the team have discovered is that using the profit was incentivizing creative accounting. So they've tightened it up. And when I say to you, there's potential for change, this is where and why.
the word
Thank
profit
you.
was never used, but it wasn't defined as good.
And just in a larger context, we've had some community groups go so well that they've turned into commercial businesses. And we haven't had, just a policy to reflect that. So as they've gone from council doing good to, get them off the ground, it's continued on over decades to become a commercial entity sort of thing. So,
Okay.
yeah.
And of course, commercial rent is always calculated on market rent, although we have given ourselves the ability in the new policy to work on CPI if it's more affordable.
Yeah.
Because a market valuation costs in the region of 2,000 to 3,000 rand, dollars. Sorry, talking South African. Wow, it's been 25 years since I said that.
Well, 3,000 rand, what's that, $15?
Well, it wasn't when you left.
If it was rand, it's quite cheap, I must tell you that. We've included or just covered the risk and maintenance and health and safety requirements in leases a bit more. So if there's a sublease or alterations to the buildings or land, then we need to be told about it and approve it. Just had a bit of more clarity on maintenance responsibilities. So what is the tenant responsible for and what is the asset landlord responsible for? And we're just encouraging a $5 million public liability insurance with lessees, but we have had some pushback that it's too expensive. We've also had.
Quite expensive.
And we've heard that it's not expensive, so.
Oh, it's not?
So I've had the various opinions, but so we're encouraging it, but just clarifying, because some of our tenants seem to think that the council's public liability insurance covers their actions, but it does not. So we're just being a bit more clear on that. Thank you. Another slide. Yes, so as Alex has explained, the delegations table we've included now in the policy. It was just hard for the new team to know when do we have to take staff to council and when not. So the delegations is similar to the delegations that you've approved. Basically, in principle, any new lease or a renewal that's for expired lease that's changed in the conditions will be brought to you for decision and obviously to council. It's only cases where we've got a lease that's with the same people for the same terms and we don't intend to reuse the land for something else, that we might have staff delegations. Anything controversial will still be brought to the board and council. We will be doing, that has been the practice anyway, rent reviews and renewals in terms of the agreement, right of renewals, we'll still continue to do as on the staff delegation. At file note required for exceptions, this is basically what I explained, is if there's any out of the ordinary matters, we'll bring it back to the board and council. And then we've just got a bit of more of a criteria that we'll use as staff under delegation to do our renewals and assignment criteria. So that's all delegated under the delegations. But I want to just address that this is a new team. We've only been in place, the statutory team, the new statutory team for the last year and a bit. We had to get through quite a bit of backlog and we understand the need for the boards and it's been expressed by other boards to get a bit of a work plan. The last year's been spent on delegations, catching up, reactive, not proactive. But we've reached a point where our data is now in a lease management system and not in a spreadsheet. So we actually can do some reporting now. So we're just in the process of basically doing some data quality checks, and then we'll be coming to the board with a bit of a view on what is your leases at the moment, how long are they, when are they coming up for renewal or for review, so that you've got a bit of a feel for what's coming up to.
I wouldn't even know what our leases are.
Yeah, we're much higher.
Yeah, so I said, well, yeah. Rugby.
You've got a fair bit of, not as much, but you've got community, quite a bit of community of all the sports clubs, and then you've got agreement with the mine, Hawkswood. You've got across the road the industrial, commercial leases.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so there's a fair.
It's quite a bit.
You don't even think about it, do you?
So it's quite, and our statutory team's literally 2 people. It's tiny for the size district we are, and how, probably like under management and CODC with everything, whether it's leased or not, or just sitting as an asset under our property portfolios, nearly about $500 million. So it's quite a lot for our team to be managing. Yeah, right across. So, as Alva said, it's just important to note that the team have done a lot of work over the last 12 months and, getting the system into a good place and working really hard. And we are trying our best to prioritise our backlog and our workflows and all of that kind of stuff. And so as things do come up, we are trying to keep everybody as informed as we can, but just being conscious of that, and we just all work together as much as we can to prioritise to get through the workflows.
So this one's on the agenda for next Wednesday. And when I wrote the report, I forgot that I hadn't been to Teviot, and I wrote it was accepted by all 4 boards. So if you don't like what we've written here, I will verbally update at the meeting with the new feedback, and my apologies for that. And we are suggesting some targeted engagement with community groups rather than the passing of the policy as is. That's because we haven't done that in so long. We've just used community board feedback. I think it's quite timely just to go out and get that extra advice before we ask for it to be implemented.
So that's from like your golf club and stuff like that. So like if the golf club, you're talking to them and because they have begged to have their camper van people back, their MTA people back.
Unfortunately, the reserve management plan and this board has actually decided not to approve that in the past.
It's really sad because it stops, so they just had all their diesel flogged, but when you've got people that are already pre-approved in the Motorhome Association, and these are old people, they're not freedom campers. It was a really good, they were good watchdogs at the golf club, and they were good for being in town.
Yeah. Now, there certainly have been a report to the council. I have had the request from the rugby club again, and Gordy has referred them back to the decision of the board that it wasn't allowed. So
It's the golf club you're talking about.
The golf,
but
it's such a shame now that they're shoved over there, so they drive through town, they go over to the race course, and then they go out and they're gone. They drop their shit off
I'm not saying don't.
from rock.
The pros and cons of it all haven't sort of, that decision was made before I came on the board, so it's about.
Well, they were classed as freedom campers, but they're not freedom campers in any way, shape or form. They're fully self-contained.
So what I'm saying is that if we were to revisit that, what would be the process to do so?
if you request us to bring a report,
Just report back to here to recommend to council.
Gordy's got his hand up.
Always got an idea.
Yep. So as I said last time, so this is a reserve management plan process. So you need to review the reserve management plan in its entirety under the Reserves Act. It's not a board decision. The decision's been made and approved by council. So you can't just decide that you will let them go on one spot. So it needs to be communicated and to the whole community so they can have feedback on where you want camping. And it wasn't just freedom camping, it's camping. That's what it's called. A freedom camping is a part of camping, so it's camping is what the reserve management plan says. So as I said last time, when we get some we need some resource to do that. And then as we can move through the resource, we can do those sort of reviews of these reserve management plans. The reserve management plan reflected what the community of the day said about camping. It wasn't council decision. It's what the day, I think it was 2014 or 2016 that must have done that reserve management plan. Just don't have it in front of me, but yeah, that's what it reflects.
So, is there flexibility in there for exceptions to it, or is it like it's a CODC one?
So the Teviot Valley Reserve Management Plan applies to all the reserves within the Teviot Valley. It's not council wide, and council's also passed a bylaw recently, which is waiting for the minister's consent about that will also help us determine where and where camping can't happen. But it needs to go through a proper process to undo, if that's what you're asking, and that process can happen, but it's a longer process than just a decision.
Can we not redesignate that part of the that area? Like,
Well, that
essentially
whole area is King George
not
Park
the whole area,
Recreation
just
Reserve.
the car park, because originally that wasn't actually included in the lease. It's now in the lease of the golf club. So is there not a way that we can redesignate just that area so we can allow the fully self-contained?
So to be clear, the lease has really got nothing to do with the reserve management plan, camping process. Yeah.
I absolutely understand that, but I'm just thinking of workarounds. I'm just thinking of.
Well, that would be a bigger process than reviewing the plan, because then you'd have to go through a public notification to call that some other sort of reserve, and then survey it out. So that's quite difficult, because it's all part of one great recreation reserve. You know, it's 100 hectares or something, that whole park, including the golf course, the forestry bit in King George Park. It's a great big reserve under one title, really. We can come back to you on the process if you like, and we can detail what's involved.
Can we put this on the agenda for the next meeting?
What did you want from the?
Why don't we have a chat internally amongst us and see what we think is a go for potential, and then we can ask, rather than asking now, because we don't know what we're going to ask for.
I know, but if we ask for this reserve management plan to be relooked at for the motorhome people park up again, and we can have a talk before then.
So I think as I just how that would go in play is the reserve management project looking at now, but 2014 was when it looked up for the Teviot Valley. So to update a reserve management plan, there is a bit of a process on the board and council have to resolve to open up the reserve management plan to notify the public, and then you go through a whole consultation process. So it's not just so much about how do we find a way to do it. It would be the parks team also have probably 5 or 6 others ahead of this one from reserve management plan that are expired. So, you know, sort of beyond 20 years old. So it'd be around where would it sit in the work program. And it wouldn't just be an overnight fix. But
well, yeah, you know, this has been on the cards for about 4 years now. We've been trying to get these people back.
Yeah.
So could we get it in the queue then?
Yeah, you could get it. I mean, yeah, you could get it as part of the work program to look at in the future.
I think you need to be aware, if you do that, you might get the same answer. The community might not want that in that spot, and all the other reserves as well. So the only one that has camping is Pinders Pond. I think all the others in Teviot don't.
This is the problem that we keep running into, is that these are purely the motorhome association people, full stop. They're not anybody else. So it's not a random house bus can just pull up and stay for 3 days. It's through the motorhome association, and it's the people in the golf club who are very involved in the motorhome association. It's very well policed by them. you know, so
I
it's.
think you're right. We
And
need
we
to,
had it with with our last chairman, couldn't differentiate between a random and a house bus that was just parking up anywhere, and people through the motorhome association who've already been vetted, they're fully self-contained, and they could rock up, I think, for 2 nights.
Hmm.
And they
I think we
were.
need to talk about
We need to define
Yeah.
it.
it, and then if we do want to request it, it's looked at. The reserve management plan, VW, it goes in the queue, we'll look at the back of it by the sounds of it, but that's fine.
I don't think it needs to die, well, I'm not suggesting it should die at all, I think what we should do is,
I think it's also bigger than what we're thinking.
yeah, but we should be quite clear about what we might be asking for.
But it needn't be so big, that's problem.
Well,
But unfortunately, it falls under the reserves. So
Yeah,
that's why
I think it's just important to note the community board at the time developed this, and so at the time that was important to them, where camping was and wasn't. You know, and so they're the things you have to go through and change, and that's why we have these reserve management plans. Yeah.
okay.
To zoom all the way back to where the question started, yes, we will reach out to them as they provide feedback like that. The process is it sits within our community engagement team. So Deb does the analysis. She feeds it all to Rebecca, who makes those community plans.
Yeah.
And then we look for where we can slot things in. So we'll do that with all those kinds of suggestions. Is there anything else for Zelda and I while we're here? Or are you happy with me saying the feedback was to continue on with this piece of work?
Are you happy?
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your work.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, it's fine.
Well, that-
Thanks for your
And go.